So, upward move of countries' rates, exchange rates all over the world is happening. It just hasn't been officially announced. And one of the ways you see them actually doing this is when they start removing the zeros, because again, when you add the zeros, you've added the zeros because you've had high inflation, economic instability, horrible GDP, gross domestic product, and typically corruption and conflict in your region. So you add the zeros like Zimbabwe did, like Venezuela did, and many Vietnam, many countries added zeros when they were suffering with hyperinflation. That means they were printing out a lot of currency backed by nothing, because the world reserve currency was the United States dollar. So these countries had to peg their currency to the USD and not to gold. Well, now countries are pegging their currency to gold. This is why you hear announcements that countries are removing the zeros, because they're preparing for a revaluation or an upward adjustment to the country's currency. It's happening right now. I'm going to show you some of the currencies that have removed the zeros. And some of you heard about, and I reported this in my private group, Iraq, that just stated that they were going to remove zeros. And we knew that was going to happen when Iraq got a new president that's an economist or a banker, a financier. He's not a politician. He knows how to stabilize the economy. He knows about finances. He knows how to implement economic policy. So we knew Iraq was about to have an upward adjustment of their currency and remove their zeros and back their currency with gold. I'm going to have to show you an article that I found years ago that said Iraq. Actually, Google used to say Iraq was backed by gold. I think it was probably like 2018, but they didn't make that announcement publicly. I reported on that when we first found it, and then, of course, they scrubbed it from the internet. I'll show you in a minute. But here are some other currencies. By the way, if you're interested in following financial and global economic news before most people, then hit the join button on any of my videos and join our private group. I've been reporting on the gold standard before there was an announcement of the gold standard. That's why many of my videos were flagged. Many of my YouTube channels were taken down because we were reporting the news before it was announced. We reported on gold. We reported on gold backs. Back then, we called it gold RM notes, and we told people to get them when they were only $1. 24 karat gold pressed on a note that you can use right now today to buy local goods and services. When I started speaking about that in 2016, 2017, those gold RM notes were $1. There were only 13 states that had them. Now there's 46 states. So Syria, they unveiled a new currency where they remove zeros. Remember, that's a sign of economic stability, and that's a sign that they've abated or dealt with inflation or hyperinflation. The Bank of England, they released their new currencies. The revaluation of currencies, okay, it's happening behind the scenes, the upward adjustment of currencies. Who else? Japan. We've been hearing news about the Japanese economy plummeting and the yen taking a low dive, but behind the scenes, Japan released their new banknotes where they had removed the zeros. What year was that? In 2024. We report the news before mainstream media does. The world knows the yen as being on the brink of collapse and the Japanese government struggling. We know that Japan has already removed the zeros and unveiled their new currency. Who else? Is that Sri Lanka? Yep. Sri Lanka unveiled their new currency. The Central Bank of Kenya unveiled their new currency. Who is this? The European Central Bank. And who else? Here it is right here. The Bank of England unveiled their new currencies. Oh, and let me see who the Bank of England. Oh, let me see if I can get back there to the Bank of England. Okay. One of the most visible changes of the new reign of Charles III back then, the king was presented with them by the Bank of England. Okay. India, the Reserve Bank of India, issued out their new currencies. The Indian rupee is the Indian rupee, Indonesian rupiah, and the Indian rupee. Argentina released unveiled their new currency. Russia unveiled their new currency in 2025, last year. And last year, when was it? No, actually in 2022, the Russian ruble was the strongest performing currency in the world. And one of the reasons I assert that the Russian ruble was the strongest performing currency in the world is because in 2022, when Vladimir Putin declared war against the Ukraine, Biden put sanctions on Russia and told everybody not to do business with them. And Russia clapped back and said, "We don't need to use, we don't need to do business with the United States Incorporated. We don't need anything, any dealings with you. We're going to use our own currency backed by gold for trade, and we won't use the United States dollar. We can circumvent the United States Incorporated, the whole government, and we can circumvent or work around using the USD." And Vladimir announced he would be using his own Russian ruble. Then he went to the BRICS conference, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and told all other countries to use the Russian ruble instead of the United States dollar. And he told them, from here on, after you use my currency, we're going to start each nation using their own country's currency instead of the United States dollar. And that was a part of Project Sandman, the Project Sandman Pact or Project Sandman Agreement. Vladimir Putin was the trigger. What was Project Sandman? Project Sandman was the agreement that, when triggered, all nations would stop trading with the dollar and use their own local currencies backed by gold. What was the trigger? Putin going over to Ukraine and declaring war. And that triggered Biden to put sanctions on Vladimir Putin. Then he just stopped trading with the dollar and he went to the BRICS conference and told everybody else to do the same. And here we are today. Bulgaria, as of January 2026, on the 1st, released their new currency, restructured their currency. Norway. Norway's new banknotes, by exploring the beauty of boundaries, moved away from traditional portraits of famous Norwegians. The design translates ancient mosaics into modern pixels representing boundaries between sea, land, and air. The thematic approach creates a more democratic visual universe for what may be Norway's final paper currency before going fully digital. That's important because as we move away from the old monetary system, a part of the global currency reset is also moving from using fiat to using digital currencies. And this is why the United States Treasury approved Trump's plan to phase out all paper currencies in exchange for, or and instead use digital currencies and gold. And I'll show you that article, but you've probably seen me report on that as well. New Falkland Islands released their new currency. Who else? The Central Bank of Sudan issued their new currency. Restructuring their currency, preparing for upward movement or revaluation. Restructuring the currency again, removing a zero to abate or deal with hyperinflation of the currency. No more extra money printing of currencies. Now these currencies will be backed by precious metals. The Philippines unveiled their new currencies. I don't have it here, but Ghana unveiled their new currency. Zimbabwe unveiled their new currency called the ZIG. We all know that's backed by gold. I reported that as soon as it happened. Ghana, was it Ghana? No, that's Zimbabwe. The Zimbabwe ZIG is already, it's ZIG gold, already backed by gold. Australia new $5 note was unveiled. I like not, it's, yeah, I like this because listen to this. Australia's new $5 banknote will not feature Britain's King Charles III, but rather a new design that honors the culture in the history of the first Australians, its central bank announced. Do you know who the first Australians are? They're called the Aboriginals. They are the copper colored people that were conquered by Europeans. The original first Australians now will be featured on their currency. The restructuring of the currency. The restructuring is happening already. The global currency reset, where all countries will be restructuring their currency and placing an upward value on their currency, is happening right now. It just has not been largely announced. On January 1st, 2026, who announced this? Guatemala unveiled their new currency. Iran was set to remove four zeros. We announced this in 2025. And I said, listen, President Trump said in 2025, Iran, he said, I think they'll listen to us. He said, we're going to remove sanctions from Iran. I think they're going to listen to us. And they're going to not only listen to us, but they're going to remove their control from Iraq. Because Iran back then was calling for the American troops to leave Iraq. They said our position there, the American troops there, were adversarial. But the Iraqi people and the Iraqi government said, no, Americans, excuse me, troops being on our soil, they're not adversarial. They're actually our friends. They're helping us. They're advisory. They're planning an advisory role. So Iraq said America being there, the United States military being in Iraq, were advisory. They were playing an advisory role. But Iran said, no, they're playing an adversarial role. So Iran called for U.S. troops to move. And President Trump said, we're not leaving. We're going to continue to protect Iraq. And we won't leave until Iraq pays us. Then by the end of 2025, troops started leaving Iraq, which let us know that we have been paid out. And Trump has said anyway that Iraq was paying us. And that he said under his first administration, we already had millions of the Iraqi dinar, billions, excuse me, in our bank account under his first administration. He said, but we're not leaving until they fully pay us. Well, we started moving the end of last year and removing our equipment. But Iran was controlling Iraq. President Trump got rid of their leader. He put sanctions on them, but he said, I'm going to lift it eventually. And we told our private group then, invest in Iran. It was hard back then to find the Iranian rial, but we found it. And we shared it with the private group. Join the private group if you're interested in getting the news early. But they were set to remove four zeros a while ago. So the news is going to tell you about the war. The news is going to keep you on the edge of your seat thinking, everything's bad. But we tend not to listen to mainstream media. And there are more countries. I'll just let you know that the global currency reset and restructuring of currencies is happening already. So let's go back to what made the United States dollar the world reserve currency. What made the United States dollar the world reserve currency was the United States having an agreement with Saudi Arabia that they would protect the Saudi kingdom in exchange for oil from Saudi Arabia. And then the United States government will only allow countries to get oil from Saudi Arabia. And they had to use the dollar to do it. That is what made the United States dollar, the world reserve currency. And that's what gave the United States financial and economic hegemony, meaning they were the powerhouse. They were the world leaders. They were the controllers, the bullies, if you will. And their currency was the world reserve currency that each nation had to use, or they had to peg their currency to the United States dollar, not to gold, not to silver. In fact, these countries' gold and silver was stolen from them. But here's how you know that countries are preparing for a global currency reset and a restructuring, revaluing of currency. This is what they do. They repatriate their stolen money. Okay, remember when the leader right before this new Iraqi leader came to power, Al Sudani came to power, he said, leaders before me were corrupted. They don't care about the people, but I care about the people. He said, I'm going to fight endemic corruption, work with the central bank, work with other nations to return my stolen money, and work with the central bank of Iraq to revalue the Iraqi dinar against the United States dollar. Well, he not only started that process, but other countries did the same thing. So here's again how you know that countries are preparing for the revaluation of currencies. Hold on. I'm trying to find a an article that I had that Iraq was gold back that I had years ago. They get rid of corruption. They return their stolen money. They implement new economic policies. What else did they do? They fix the infrastructure in their country. They call their entrepreneurs back home, and they then begin to call on domestic and foreign investors to come invest in their country. They change economic policies. They do some economic restructuring. They end corruption. They get rid of corruption out of their country. They repatriate their gold back to them or return their stolen money. They call their entrepreneurs back home and they ask for domestic and foreign investors to come and invest in their countries. This is happening all over the world. It happened with Iraq. It happened with Zimbabwe. It happened with Vietnam. It happened with Venezuela and other countries. I named those countries because those are the countries many of you are invested in. And that's why you have foreign currencies, because you know that those countries have dealt with hyperinflation. They've printed a lot of money. They've had to. They have had corruption in their countries. They were controlled by the United States Incorporated. And now the corruption is being abated. You heard Iraq said they dealt with corruption in their country. Venezuela, Vietnam, many nations have already gotten rid of corruption out of their administration or their governments. They got rid of the corruption. They had their gold repatriated back from the Vatican. They returned their stolen money. In fact, in my private group, I talked about how Vietnam returned their stolen money, Venezuela, Iraq, Zimbabwe, and many other nations reported that they returned their stolen money. They're fixing up the infrastructure in these countries. And they've called their entrepreneurs back home. And then a lot of them came to America and asked American investors to come and invest in their countries. They are preparing for the global currency reset and the revaluation of currencies right now. It's just that people are not, well, I should say mainstream media is not talking about it. They don't want that information out yet. Let me see what you all think about this. It's happening already right now. So once Vladimir Putin in 2022 declared war on Ukraine, a lot of that information went to the House Oversight Committee, where James Comer was the chair of that committee. And it was important that that information went to the House Oversight Committee because at that time, Joe Biden was the legal president or resident, right? So when Vladimir Putin went to Ukraine, he uncovered that a lot of presidents, including Biden, was allegedly involved in many nefarious activities in Ukraine. There were labs that were there where they were allegedly creating diseases. There was a lot of money laundering, a lot of deep underground military bases where things were bad that were happening to children. A lot of stuff was going on. And so when that information went to James Comer, you could actually see on the House Oversight Committee's website the documented proof that there was a lot of corruption going on there. That's what incensed Biden. And that's why he put sanctions on Vladimir Putin. But Putin knew what he was doing by sending that information to James Comer and by making that information widely known. Because remember, again, Project Sandman was the secret agreement between 209 nations that, when triggered, they would stop trading with the dollar and use their own currency for trade. So Putin upset Biden. Biden put sanctions on him. Then Vladimir Putin said, skip the United States. I'm not scared of the United States. Got my own military. I don't need the USD for my currency. It was the world reserve currency, but he already had a plan. He went to the BRICS conference, which had been actually organized before the war, years before the Ukrainian war, right? He went to the conference where there was Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa and said, hey, let's all stop trading with the dollar. We're going to use the Russian ruble. Again, the Russian ruble was the strongest performing currency in the world in 2022. Then they tapped on the shoulders of Saudi Arabia and said, join BRICS. And BRICS became known as Saudi BRICS. Why is that important that Saudi Arabia joined BRICS in 2022? Unbeknownst to most people, mainstream media, they missed it. They didn't catch it. That was important because Saudi Arabia is the reason why the United States dollar was the world reserve currency. There was an agreement between Saudi Arabia and the United States government that the government would protect the Saudi kingdom in exchange for their oil. And it would force all nations to only get oil from Saudi Arabia, not Iraq, not Venezuela, and all these other oil rich nations, but only Saudi Arabia. And they had to use the dollar to do it. Well, Saudi Arabia joining BRICS now means that the agreement between Saudi Arabia was no longer honored. They pulled a move covertly by joining BRICS in 2022. Then the following year, the written and verbal agreement was not renewed. Of course, it wasn't. Now, if you knew where to look, you saw that it wasn't renewed in 2023, but we already knew that in 2022 when they joined BRICS and BRICS became known as South BRICS. And then you had many other nations to join, and BRICS became known as BRICS Plus, where all nations again had stopped trading with the United States dollar and instead were using their own currencies backed by gold. Where did the gold come from? They repatriated their gold back from the Vatican, and that's why there were a whole lot of planes captured coming from, or people's, media caught it, some people on social media was talking about it, that showed these planes coming from the Vatican going all over the world, repatriating the gold back to the countries from which it was stolen. And at the same time, you saw countries saying they were working with other countries to return their stolen money. At the same time, these countries were ending corruption. You can read articles where countries were ending corruption. Iraq announced that the new president or prime minister had gotten rid of a lot of corruption in his country. He is a favorite pick of the, I should say, a favorite person, and he got the nod of approval from President Trump. Again, he's a financier, he's a banker, and he implemented new financial and economic policies to stabilize the country. That's what they do right before they have a currency reset and revaluation of currency. They put in economic policies, they stabilize the country by repatriating the gold back to them. They get rid of corruption. They call back their entrepreneurs. They ask for foreign and domestic investors to invest in their countries. They broker trade deals. They do all type of wonderful things that these countries are already doing right now. So when is the global currency reset happening? Right now. The large scale shift and how international monetary systems work is happening right now. They're not using the United States dollar, or they made an agreement not to, but to use their own country's currency backed by precious metals. They're also moving away from the SWIFT system to the quantum financial system, a whole new way of doing business and transactions between nations. So Again, many countries added zeros to their currencies when they had to deal with hyperinflation. A lot of countries were printing up money that was backed by nothing because the people still needed money. The government still had to pay their government salaries to their workers. They still had to make a living, even though their currency was pegged to the US dollar that was backed by nothing. But what happens at the end of every empire? At the end of every empire, they rack up the debt. They print as much money as they can while they buy themselves some commodities, but then they crash the system and move towards a whole new, strong, gold backed monetary system. They rack up the debt. Remember Janet Yellen? We've reached the debt ceiling. We have to take extraordinary measures to make ourselves whole. What did she suggest? She suggested that they take money from government workers' retirement accounts to make the Federal Reserve, whole. They print as much money as they can at the end of every empire. They rack up the debt. They buy themselves assets, yes, but they rack up the debt and then they crash that system and move to a sound monetary system. We're at the end of an empire now. They've already printed up as much money as they can. They've already racked up the debt. Now they're crashing the system and moving towards a sound monetary system, which is a system backed by gold. That's called the crack up boom. And that's what's happening right now. The global currency reset is happening right now. It is upon us right now. And so is the restructuring of currencies. Let's see, what is a restructuring of currencies? Let's see if I can find that. A restructuring of currencies, often called a currency reset, monetary reform, or redenomination, is a major change to how a country manages its monies. Governments do this to fix high inflation, update old financial systems, or handle massive national debt. I'll show it to you. Thank you for joining me. 236 people in the chat. Please hit the like button and share the video. See? What is restructuring of currency? A restructuring of currency, often called a currency reset, is happening globally. Is monetary reform, also known as monetary reform to change, or redenomination, all the same thing. It's a major change to how a country manages its money. Governments do this to fix high inflation. When they have high inflation, they add zeros. If you're fixing high inflation, you're removing zeros, which is a currency reset and restructuring of currency. It is also monetary reform or redenomination. It's happening. Governments do this to fix inflation, update financial systems, or handle massive national debt. Cutting zeros off old money to make prices easier to read and use. For example, trading 1,000 old units of a currency for one new unit. So some people got upset. They got a little worried. Well, if you remove zeros, then that reduces the value of the currency. No, it doesn't reduce the value of the currency. It definitely doesn't make the currency less valuable. You're just abating inflation. You see, they got gold right here. New pegs or backing. What are we talking about? We're talking about currency restructuring, currency reset, okay? New pegs. Countries are no longer pegging their currency to the United States dollar. That's my commentary, Dr. Kiera Pruitt's commentary. But what does AI say about it? Changing what gives the money value, such as tying a currency to gold, or tying a currency to a group of foreign assets or commodities instead of letting it float freely. This is what's happening. When you have high inflation, your currency is floating freely. It's backed by nothing, but now you're tying it to gold because at the end of every empire, They print as much money as they can. They rack up the debt. Then they crash the system and move towards a sound monetary system called the gold standard. Sound system by tying the money to gold. And then a currency restructuring or reset deals with digital transitions. Moving physical cash into a central bank digital currency is what they said, controlled by the government. But we know that states all over America have rejected CBDCs and said, we're not dealing with central bank digital currencies. We will have digital assets that the states back, excuse me, buy gold, back with gold. So they call it central bank digital currencies or CBDCs, but the central bank is no longer operating. The Federal Reserve Central Banking System is insolvent. I've reported on that many times. It's defunct and it's bankrupt, just like the United States government. And this is why the Supreme Court ruled July 2024 that state sponsored banks can operate independently from the Federal Reserve Central Banking System and issue out their own gold-backed currencies. The global currency reset is happening in real time. The restructuring of currencies is happening right now. The revaluation of currencies is happening behind the scenes. An upward adjustment of the currency we know is happening because the currencies are now backed by gold, and the currencies are now restructuring because the countries have removed the zeros from those currencies. Let me know what you think about this. See if I can find Iraq is backed by gold. Oh, Iraqi dinar. Yes. Let me see if I can find. Woo. Okay. Thank God. Let me show you all something that I reported a long time ago. See, the rule of the elite is that they must tell you what they're going to do. It's up to us to actually catch it, see it, or know it. I reported this on one of my old channels that got taken down. This was in 2020. This is something I captured this. I put it on a post on one of my old YouTube channels, and I said Iraqi dinar is backed by gold. I posted this 3 hours ago. It was 2022 when I said this. I asked Google in 2020. Oh, okay. I posted this 3 hours ago in 20. I posted in 2020 and I posted in 2022. I had several channels that was taken down. And this is what Google said when I asked, is the Iraqi dinar backed by gold? This is what Google said in 2020. Iraqi dinar is backed by gold now, and the currencies issued backed by gold are considered one of the most powerful currencies in the world. Moreover, the currency is supported by $82 billion cash reserves and 122 tons of gold reserves, along with many other foreign bills that make it stronger in the foreign market. I posted that in 2020 and 2022. This is what, and I'm so glad we captured that. My friend Patrick, and he go by Metroid, his name on social media is Metroid. He's from Cleveland. I'm from Cleveland. So we stayed in contact through the years as we were following the global currency reset. And we both captured it and we saved it. Thank God. Because now you can't find it on the internet. It said back in 2020, the Iraqi dinar is backed by gold now, and the currencies issued backed by gold are considered one of the most powerful currencies in the world. Those currencies are supported by $82 billion cash reserves and 122 tons of gold reserves, along with many other foreign bills that were backing the Iraqi dinar that made it stronger in the foreign market. Now, they didn't make this formal announcement. The exchange rate wasn't published on Forex. But for those of us who are invested in Iraq, that was very encouraging news. Again, they don't have to make this public for everybody to see it, but they'll let you know what's happening. You just have to know when and where to catch it. So the global currency reset is already happening. The revaluation of currencies is happening. The upward adjustment of currencies, it just hasn't made it to the Forex, they haven't put it on trading platforms. They haven't made a formal announcement. But if I were you, I would do something with this information. I wouldn't sit on it. Thank you. I see what you all are saying. Sandra says, I've lived in other countries. No place like home. Check yourselves before you wreck yourselves. There is no place like home. The petrodollar is gone. The value of it, someone says here is the, in fact, I reported this in my private group. Shout out to the private group. If you're part of the Silver Soul Tribe, Creator bless you. We reported that there was a billionaire that talked about the petrodollar being dead, and he actually said to invest in foreign currencies. And we reported that. But a year or two ago, we were like, listen, follow the money. When the money tells you the dollar is dead and consider something else, maybe we should pay attention. What'd you say? New asset backed currency has already been printed and will be phased in. Ultimately, the quantum financial system will be the future currency of the world, or be the future of the world. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yep. It's already underway and gradually being phased across the world. Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, I agree with you, Lesser Light. We don't need money, we need resources. It's just that the beings that seeded humanity on the planet desire for us to experience what it's like to actually have wealth, which is resources to your point. And one of the ways we will experience wealth will be actually some would be using currencies, paper currencies, but those currencies will be backed by gold, and we'll be using gold and silver and or digital assets. So paper currencies backed by precious metals, digital currencies, and silver and gold. Let's see, Treasury approved Trump's plan. I agree with you that we don't need the paper dollars. So what they want us to do is to experience wealth and to experience, I'm talking about the extraterrestrials, that the beings that seated us here, to experience gold, silver, precious metals, wealth, maybe using some currency, excuse me, backed by precious metals. And then we're going to phase out all of that, and we won't use money at all. To your point, I agree 100%, because you don't need money. In fact, many beings on this plane, and I guess extraterrestrials outside of this earth plane, they just manifest whatever they desire. They don't need to necessarily trade using or barter using dollars. They just manifest it, think it up, and it comes. We're getting to that point, and that's why our bodies are changing from the carnal state, to a more crystalline body. Now, there are various different articles. Some of them are conflicting, because some articles would say, no, the Treasury Department did not approve Trump's plan to phase out all paper currency. I don't know why they're doing this, because why they're trying to say it's not true. We already reported it. We already caught the news where the United States Treasury Department approved President Trump's plan to phase out paper dollars or paper money in favor of digital assets and gold coins. They'll say crypto, we call it digital coins. Other articles support my word there, my phrase there, digital assets instead of crypto. So the United States Treasury Department is the department. The United States Treasury actually is the component or the office that approved President Trump's plan to phase out all paper currencies, because the United States Treasury Department is the only entity that may deal with money according to our lawful republic, our lawful government. You have the Federal Reserve Central Banking System, that's a part of the United States Incorporated. They were printing out fiat dollars or paper money backed by nothing And then you have the Treasury, United States Treasury, that's a part of our lawful republic. They're the ones who approved President Trump's plan to phase out all paper money in favor of digital assets and gold. This is amazing. The Treasury Department also declared the United States Incorporated insolvent September 2025. It's just that it didn't make mainstream media news. In fact, some articles will tell you mainstream media missed it, that the United States Treasury declared that the United States government was insolvent, meaning that the United States government is broke. They don't have any money. They're going away. The government and the Federal Reserve Central Banking System. And we've seen movement with the Supreme Court that confirms this. The Supreme Court in June of 2025 stated that they were overturning the Chevron Doctrine. The Chevron Doctrine had given the United States Incorporated, the fake government, unlimited, I shouldn't say unlimited, expansive powers. So when the Supreme Court in June 2024 overturned the Chevron Doctrine, they said they had to shrink and downsize the government immensely because they were overturning that doctrine that had given the government expansive powers. The United States Incorporated had 447 government agencies, bodies like the FBI, the CIA, what else? The Department of Trade and Commerce, Department of all kind of things. All these entities that gave out licenses. Even the IRS, 447 government agencies used to control the people. So the Supreme Court of the United States overturned the doctrine June 2024, and they declared the United States Incorporated to be unlawful, unconstitutional, and treasonous. And they also went a step further and said any federal judge that went along with the United States Incorporated also committed treason, and any judge that knew of a judge that went along with the United States Incorporated and didn't report it to the president committed misprision of treason. So you got treason by the United States government, treason by federal judges who went along with it, and misprision of treason that went along with the judges that went along with the government and didn't report it to the president. All this happened in June of 2024. And this is why when President Trump came in 2025, he put Elon Musk over the Department of Government Efficiency. And he did that so that they could downsize or shrink the government. This is why 300,000 people lost their jobs. It wasn't because the government is being cruel. It's because the government was never was supposed to control us. The government was never supposed to have all of these agencies and entities. What do you need all these departments for? We should be controlling our own selves and our own estate. We don't need fishing license. We don't need marriage license. We don't need licenses to do anything on our own land. And we certainly don't need foreign nationals to tell us what we can do on our own land. This is why the government is being downsized. Then in 2025, there was a government shutdown. President Trump came back January 2025. First thing he did was to create the Sovereign Wealth Fund comprised of gold, silver, palladium, platinum, other precious metals, rare earth minerals, land, real estate, all other types of real estate, revenues from trade deals, etc. And he said that that sovereign wealth fund was for the sovereign people here in America. It was for the American people for humanitarian aid. It was to deal with the and rebuild the infrastructure here in America. And it was for more investments. But that sovereign wealth fund is a trust comprised of all these commodities. Again, including precious metals, rare earth minerals, real estate, stocks, bonds, and revenues from trade deals. That's for we, the American people. He did that, and as soon as he came back, January 2025, he also in that year issued out 225 executive orders. He also met with the military and National Guard, I should say. He said the military generals all over the world, and he sent the National Guard to all the major cities out all over the country. This he wasn't quiet about any of this. Why did he send the National Guard out? Well, the mainstream media, if you knew where to look, reported that gangs were dealt with, gang leaders were arrested. Now, they reported on the domestic gang leaders that were arrested, the domestic gangs, United States gangs that were torn apart, were dealt with, but they didn't report on a lot of the foreign nationals who were on our lands laundering drugs and also peddling little ones through their shell corporations. That's why the National Guard was sent out. So President Trump did that in 2025, and then he shut down the government. It was at that same time that the Treasury, United States Treasury, released an announcement that the United States was insolvent. It's just that most people didn't know about it. I found out when I got it from a military, a Marine, a military veteran, ex-Marine, who knew about it. And now we know in 2026 that that actually happened September 2025. So a lot of people started losing their jobs, but they were asked to take an early retirement. And some of them left with money and with their dignity intact. Farmer Dre, who I brought on the show many times, and I need to bring him back soon, was one of those young men. He's only 31. He served in the military and he worked for the government. When he was asked to take an early retirement, he took that money, he spoke with his wife, and they decided to buy 6 acres of land and live off the land and teach other people how to do the same. Follow Farmer Dre from Set Apart Gardens on YouTube. Wonderful young man and wife team, dual team that teaches people how to live off the land. He's also selling bug out bags. So he has things like generators on his website, tools like fishing poles and batteries and flashlights and packages of food that you can eat, that you can store for a year or so. The man is brilliant. He and his wife, brilliant, brilliant couple, Set Apart Gardens. They took an early buyout and bought land. They didn't complain. They didn't get on social media and talk bad about the government and ask why they downsized the government. The government hates the people. They said, we're going to make the best use of this money. We're going to get a USDA, United States USDA loan where you can buy land in rural areas and with 6 acres, feed our family and feed other people and teach other people how to do the same. So the government is being downsized because we never needed the government to control us anyway. In fact, there are a bunch of foreign nationals that are military combatants on our land that must go. So the government was shut down in September 2025, the longest running government shutdown, opened right before Thanksgiving and Christmas time so people can get their shopping in. And then it closed right back down in January. And now we're under a partial government shutdown. What a lot of people don't know, though, is that we very well may have another government shutdown September 2026, because September 30th, 2026 leads right into October 1st, which is at the beginning of a new fiscal year. And if the United States Incorporated does not have a new financial plan, then we will be under another government shutdown and it may never open up again because there are again unlawful entities on our lands that have to go. There are going to be more government jobs gone because the government is insolvent. It's broke. It doesn't have any money, and countries are not buying government bonds anymore. Shout out to Dex Lattimore, the economist of the Soul Tribe. Watch my latest video I did with Dex Lattimore. He talks about what it means for countries to stop buying government debt and how that whole system worked. But now that nobody's buying the government debt, they're in fact dropping those bonds. The government no longer has this extra money to recruit more foreign nationals to support them. Again, foreign nationals, the government, group of bloodline families that usurped authority from our lawful republic and from the indigenous people here, recruited other foreign nationals to come on our lands, take our jobs, take our identity. Now they're calling themselves Americans, and they have the audacity to say they're such and such American, Japanese American, Filipino American, Chinese American, Indonesian American. No, my darlings, you're a foreign national. You're Filipino, you're Japanese, you're Chinese, you're Ghanaian, you're this, you're Iranian. And that's amazing and wonderful. And we applaud you for being proud of your country. But American, you are not. We've already gone over many, many times who Americans are. 1828 Webster's definition of American. You can look it up for yourself. The copper colored people, copper colored races encountered by Europeans, but now applied to Europeans. So all these foreign nationals coming over here are not Americans. They're not their country or their nation dash American. No, you're your nation. You may be a United States citizen, but you're not an American. And that's okay. We're Americans and we're proud to be American. Just like other people are proud to assert who they are, I'm a proud American. But it's interesting how when you're copper color and you're proud to be American, somehow you're racist. Somehow people have an ought against you or some issue against you. Not everybody. Because most people are like, yeah, you should be proud that you're American because I'm proud that I'm Scottish and I'm proud that I'm German and I'm proud that I'm Malaysian and I'm proud. And I love that for them. But American, they are not. They are United States citizens. United States citizenship is a status that's afforded and granted by the United States Incorporated, the fake faux government that's now being dismantled. They consider foreign nationals citizens, not Americans. And that's okay because that's what they did. And they gave citizens privileges, not rights. The Republic acknowledges rights for the nationals of the land. The Republic for America acknowledges rights for Americans and privileges for United States citizens, which we are not. Nations in Zimbabwe have sovereign wealth funds for Zimbabweans, for the nationals. They acknowledge and grant rights to the nationals of Zimbabwe, but grant afford privileges to whomever they call citizens in their country. If I were in China, I would not be an American Chinese. I'd be an American that's living abroad in China. If I had my baby in China, my baby would not be considered Chinese, and neither would it be a Chinese citizen. It would be an American, a child of an American who was born abroad. My child will not automatically get a Chinese passport. My child will not get the so-called right to vote. My child will automatically get government benefits, free handouts like Section 8 housing, food stamps, welfare, none of that. In fact, President Trump says it doesn't happen in any place in the world where you can go to somebody else's country, get all these benefits, replace the people of those lands, call yourself by those lands, have a baby on your landmass, and the baby automatically get voting rights and privileges and passports. So here in America, you have people delivering their babies, and their babies automatically, when they were born, be getting a passport. Go back home to their country, and then come here and be able to vote, get food stamps, welfare, cash benefits, other housing, voting rights, privileges, and be able to take any job they wanted all the way up to the federal government. Again, because the federal government is a group of bloodline families that are foreign nationals. And then they would recruit people from abroad so that those people can replace the prisoners of war here who are the true indigenous Americans, the copper color races encountered by Christopher Columbus and all the other Europeans. But the time is up. The war is over and the prisoners of war have been set free. As Sheikh Jacob Bey, shout out to Sheikh Jacob Bey for letting us know that the prisoner of war flag was hanging at federal buildings all across America and at post offices. And on that POW flag, it said POW-MIA, prisoner of war, missing in action. You are not forgotten. And he let us know This is about the prisoners of war in America. Now, I know a lot of people don't like hearing that, and they were saying, no, this is about prisoners of war abroad. Why don't people want to acknowledge the prisoners of war here? The Americans, the indigenous people, misclassified as African American, Black, Negro, and colored. We are the indigenous people, not the Native Americans that are Mongoloid. The same Chinese people, Mongoloid Asian people that come over here with H-1B visas, that's the same bloodline that's laundering drugs, trafficking people right here on our country, on our soil. The same bloodline trying to replace us. They were doing it back then when they came, the Siberians, the Mongoloids, and set themselves up in teepees, calling themselves foreign nationals. I mean, not foreign, calling themselves Americans, Native Americans, getting all type of government benefits. They're still doing it to this day. Both the Indians from East Indians from Asia and the Chinese from Asia and people from all over the world coming right here on their visas, setting up shop with their fake medical degrees, fake college degrees. Some of them have bona fide degrees, but what are they doing in their businesses? You can look up Secretary Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State in 2020, February 8th, 2020. Look it up on YouTube. Mike Pompeo spoke at the governor's conference. And he said, I'm watching all of you governors here at this governor's conference. I'm an what he said, ex-CIA director. It was either FBI or CIA director. So I know what you all been doing. He said, many of you governors here in America have been complicit with the Chinese Party of China, Communist Party of China. Look it up, February 8, 2020, Mike Pompeo met with governors. February 8, 2020. He said, you've been complicit with the Communist Party of China. He said, I have your report card where you've been rated by the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, from A to F, how complicit you've been with the CCP, allowing them to infiltrate American businesses, American colleges and universities. They've infiltrated research institutions. They've infiltrated the government, and you've allowed them to set up shop here. But I'm urging you to do the right thing, because if you don't, you will be arrested and we will deal with you to the fullest extent of the law. So do the right thing. That was February 8, 2020. When I saw that happen, I was like, uh-oh, these people are going to respond. They're planning something. I got on social media and I started telling people, plan for something. The National Guard is going to be on the land. The military is going to be here. They're about to do some massive arrests. My videos got flagged. People went all over Twitter, which, by the way, I've been removed from Twitter again, but now they won't let me set up any account on Twitter anymore. But they went all over Twitter 2020 and called me crazy. But somebody captured one of the articles that I wrote, and they made videos out of it, and they put it on this video called And We Know. You all might know them. They have a Rumble channel now. And I got calls from friends from all over the country. They were like, you put up a post on Facebook. It was captured. You told everybody to prepare. There's about to be a global shutdown. I heard Mike Pompeo said that governors were complicit with the CCP, and I had been hearing all along about arrests. And because some people are tapped into other sources, we know some things that are happening just because the sources let you know. And it doesn't, not no secret top, So I'm talking about beings that are not human that have revealed certain information. But I wrote that article. Somebody took that article and they put it in papers. And I could start getting calls. People like, your article made it to churches all over the world. You told people to prepare, and it made it to And We Know, which was a popular YouTube channel at that time. And when I saw that, because people started calling me, I was elated. I couldn't believe it. What did I call that? It was captured by somebody named Mr. Ed. He also put it in some well-known Patriot reports. But Twitter, some people on Twitter just had a field day. She doesn't know what she's talking about. What does she have a PhD in? People like to say she doesn't have a real PhD. Who she thinks she is? And I would just say, just look me up. It's not that hard. People are lazy. Do your research. But we made that announcement. People got a hold of it the 1st of March. And we were saying, prepare, something's about to happen. Get you some food, get you some supplies. And a lot of people laughed. They made fun of me. They were on their talk shows thinking it was funny. What happened around the 13th? The whole world shut down, 13th of March, 2020. They weren't laughing then when they couldn't get their supplies. What am I saying? I'm saying we've been under a military operation. The good news is that massive arrests are happening. A global currency reset is occurring. A restructuring of the global financial system and a restructuring of the global economy is happening. A restructuring of the political landscape is happening where we won't have politicians. We won't have presidents. Our republic will be restored. Trump has said many times he's the last president. Prepare for something to happen. It may be good for some, but concerning for others. September 2025 at midnight, September 30th, as it dawns toward October 1st, we could really have another global shutdown. I said Corona is a cover. I did that. I'm going to show you this. Yeah. I'll show you. Operation Disclosure put this in there and their publication. Thank you for being here. 251 people in the chat. I wrote this article. The planet is being cleansed. Coronavirus is a cover. I wrote it earlier in 2020, but this guy by the name of his name was Mr. Ed, or went by Mr. Ed, published it in this place in on March the 12th, 2020. Where was this again? It made it to Rumor Mill News, and it made it to Operation Disclosure. Those were big patriot places back then in 2020 by Dr. Kia Pruitt. So Mr. Ed actually sent my article that he got from Facebook to these publications, and it went all over the world. This was it was published March 12th, 2020. But I have been telling people this for several months. We were told years ago that there would be an event that would quarantine America and possibly the planet in order to make global mass arrests. We were encouraged to stock up on food, water, and supplies. Mind you, the government, this whole world didn't shut down until about March the 13th. Somebody published this the 12th of March, but I've been talking about this for several months before that happened. I was saying we were also instructed to remain calm. Martial law may be implemented to keep people off the street while these arrests occur. Schools would be closed, flights grounded, airports closed, etc. Why? Because the people being arrested for participating in corruption and worldwide PDF and human trafficking trade, crimes against humanity, treason, erderme, rape, etc. is massive. And it affects every aspect of society. This includes Hollywood entertainers. That was before you saw ankle bracelet on Hollywood actors. NBA and NFL athletes and staff, politicians, pastors, banking CEOs, corporate heads, school officials, coaches, and educators. Some of your doctors, lawyers, judges, college professors, school teachers, police officers, and chiefs, firemen, business owners, airport workers, pilots, bankers, priests, everyday people are currently being arrested for their crimes against humanity. A lot of them are involved in nefarious behaviors and secret societies. So the masses have not been privy to their wrongdoings, ritualistic abuse, ex trafficking, child hunting, things, ritualistic behaviors, trafficking, involvement in underground activities in DUMBs, deep underground military bases. This is why some of us reported on a notable resignation list, which, by the way, you can find right now on resignation.info. We reported that for the last 2 years. I said this in 2020. And in fact, I have been reporting about these massive arrests since 2018 because I could actually see them and witness them on it was back then a YouTube channel called, it was a publication called C-Vine, cvine-net, military tribunals. Many people were on that list under the guise of resignation. Go to resignation.info, family, you'll see it. We also reported on military tribunals, which began January 2019. Some of us watched military tribunals take place on c-fine.com. The corruption is huge. President of the United States asked that people not be in crowds. This was in 2020 that this was published. One reason, other than catching the Iris Vey, is because the deep state New World Order corrupt leaders could attempt to retaliate since they know that we've been involved in a covert operation against them, so be safe. Imagine me talking about this in 2019, 2018, 2019. No wonder many of my channels were taken down because people weren't talking about this. They didn't even know that this was coming. The planet is being cleansed. The corona is a cover. While it's true that the deep state global New World Order elites created this Iris Vey and attempted to infect the masses, President Trump and the Global Alliance co-opted this operation and used it as a cover to arrest global elites, including the Pope and the unroyal family, politicians, and Hollywood elites. This was before a lot of people, it was known that these people were arrested. The mainstream media will announce that folks came down with the sickness, the virus. Actually, they've been arrested. Some have been at Gitmo for a while, actually. At some point, an announcement will be made. Remain calm, though, and be stocked up. Those people who don't have food and supplies will have an opportunity to get it from neighbors or the military because troops will likely be on the ground. This was before it happened. And they will be on the ground and make arrests and keep everybody calm. A curfew may be implemented. Boy, they had a ball calling me psycho, crazy. There's never been a curfew. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She doesn't have a real PhD. Who does she think she is? It was crazy. Then Dr. Pruitt goes on to say, we were instructed also that new monetary policies and our gold-backed system will be implemented and trillions injected into the economy. After the global arrests occur, though. Otherwise, these nefarious beings would have once again stolen our wealth and re-empowered themselves. You have to have massive arrests of these nefarious people. This is why the CCP, 400 million people defected from the CCP in between 2022 and 2023 because they knew their time was up, the Chinese Communist Party. You have to arrest them. You got to get rid of also these foreign nationals that are operating in fraud here on these lands. Everybody got to go. And the nefarious ones have to be arrested. Then you will have a global currency reset officially announced. Otherwise, if you do it before they were arrested, they will once again re-empower themselves and steal our money or our wealth. Soon, the republic, our lawful government, will be restored and constitutional law will be restored as well. So be encouraged. Dr. Pruitt writes, things are finally getting better for humanity. What an exciting time to be alive. Soon we will enjoy the benefits of Nasara Jasara and our sovereignty and finally enjoy planetary peace and prosperity. Be well. So again, let's see. Mr. Ed, somebody going by Mr. Ed, submitted this. I wrote it. It was written by Dr. Kia Pruitt. It was submitted March 12th, 2020. The day before it was announcement of a world shutdown, but I've been talking about that the year prior, actually since 2018. Why am I mentioning that? Because we are at the point where the United States Corporated has already been it's already been announced that the corporation is insolvent. We've already been under a full shutdown in 2025, and now we're under a partial shutdown. The government, the United States Incorporated, is not our lawful government. It's insolvent. The Supreme Court already said they were in downsizing the government and that they had overturned the Chevron doctrine as of June 2024. Then they came back in July and said that state sponsored banks can operate independently from the Federal Reserve central banking system that's attached to the United States Incorporated. And the state sponsored banks could have their own charter and issue out their own gold backed currencies. It's done. The U.S. Incorporated is done. The United States dollar is done. The Federal Reserve central banking system is done. So the government may never come back officially. An announcement has to be made. We're still under a shutdown. It's just called a partial shutdown, but it's insolvent. What's going to happen in September? Another shutdown? It's going to be a new fiscal year. Let me see. Is it likely we'll have another government shutdown? Let's see what AI say. However, the good news is once the United States Incorporated is done, our lawful republic resurfaces and our gold backed currency is now online. The global currency is announced, and people can go to the bank and exchange their currencies because the currencies that you hold will now be revalued. There will be an upward adjustment of the currencies. Uh-oh. Let's see what they say about, is there a possible government shutdown? I'm saying that we need to prepare. There's good news on the other side. But for some people that aren't ready, it might be a little jarring because they might be taken aback. Is it likely we'll have another government shutdown? Here are the results. AI overview. Yes, a government shutdown is a real possibility before current funding expires on October 1st, 2026. Narrow congressional margins, fierce policy disagreements over grants and border security, and a tight legislative calendar ahead of the midterm elections mean lawmakers face a steep uphill battle to agree on a long-term budget. The federal funding runs out at midnight, February 30th, 2026. That's the deadline. Congress is currently on recess and has very few working days left in September to pass full appropriate bills, to pass full appropriations bill or a temporary fix before the deadline. The Senate passed a temporary stopgate resolution. And you want to know when they passed that temporary stopgate bill, continuing resolution to extend funding into December? They did that August the 8th, 2026. You know what August the 8th is? That's the apex of the energy, the Lionsgate energy. So remember I said the Lionsgate portal opened between July 28th and August the 12th, 2026. But that energy was at its height, at its pinnacle on August the 8th. That's when the stopgate would pass. And I said you're going to see all kind of news come out between July 28th and August the 12th when the gate closed. So the Lionsgate portal is when Sirius B is in alignment with other planets. Or another way of playing is the sun in Leo. Right. The sun in Leo. Is that how they said? August. The sun aligns with Sirius, Earth, and Orion's belt. These planets align and it opens up a portal or a gateway for where energy floods in. When this energy floods in, you're supposed to go bursting through the gate, roaring like a lion, declaring your victory. It's also a high manifestation time between July 28th and August the 8th. July 28th when the portal opens, all the way to August the 12th. But the 8th is the pinnacle, the highest point of the energy. So a lot of people were manifesting. A lot of people were focusing on what it is they desire to bring into their reality. Senate was passing bills during that time. They passed a temporary stopgate bill, continuing resolution to extend funding into December, but the Senate passed that. They got to get past other places. Here you go. Sticking points. Debates over administrative grant rules and homeland or border security provisions continue to divide the House and the Senate. With the November midterms looming, political incentives for compromise are low as both parties weigh the public relations fallout of a funding impasse. While leadership on both sides generally want to avoid a disruptive shutdown, passing a stopgate continuing resolution requires bipartisan agreement to avert a temporary funding lapse. So you only have one side that agreed. Everybody hasn't agreed yet to the stopgate to have funding all the way through December. So we very well could have another full out shutdown. Remember, Trump said he was the last president, and I'm telling you that the government is insolvent. You already know the Supreme Court overturned the Chevron doctrine. You can look that up. That happened in June of 2024. And the U.S. Treasury said that the government was insolvent. Even though some people are debunking that the government is insolvent or saying that it's not, it still has money. I'm telling you, the United States Incorporated prints out fiat that's backed by nothing, and nobody else in the world is interested in fiat dollars. They're interested in their own local currencies backed by precious metals and or using precious metals itself. David says when you sign your signature on a bank loan, your loan is paid in full to the banks. The bank charges you monthly plus an interest rate on top of that, double dipping and money laundering. I agree. You're seeing what people are saying. Right. Politics isn't the answer, sovereignty is. Yes, I did see that we bailed out Japan last month, I think it was. Let's see. We are at the end. Absolutely. You said the United States also froze American assets from Russia. Thank you. Another reason for Eric's popular to another reason Eric is popular. Okay, to weaken or end the United States dollar. Thank you. What'd you say? The Ukraine war was triggered by NATO surrounding Russia's military and using Ukraine as a proxy. Thank you. You all are really into this conversation. Do you think we'll have another government shutdown? That's right. The wealth on the planet was meant to be free flowing like water. Nobody was supposed to be working to live. What do you do for a living? That doesn't even sound right. We're not supposed to be working for people. We can grow our own food if you call that work or create. But working for for rich folks, and definitely if you're in America working for foreign nationals, that's weird. Should if you're gonna do any work, it should be for your own family, your own bloodline, and maybe you can trade, barter, do business with other nations. David says exchanges or foreign currency exchanges will take place after the emergency broadcast system announcement. I'm seeing what you all are saying. Absolutely. Iraq currently is working on a budget for 2027. It'll be smart to revalue with gold, new lower notes that will be coming soon, blessed and highly favored said. Thank you for the jewels. I appreciate the gifts. And thank you also for 250 people being in chat. Please hit the like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Biden was a fake military puppet president to take down the deep state. Yeah, he was just a figurehead while President Trump was still the commander in chief behind the scenes. President Trump is the president. He was 45 through 47. Interestingly, on the movie Melania, the camera panned over to a car license plate that said Trump, 45 dash through 47. The 45th president and he was 46 and 47. President of the United States Incorporated. People want to say he's the president of the Republic, but I beg to differ. It's the president and commander in chief of the United States Incorporated. That's why he said he's going to be the last president. Thank you so much for being a new member. I appreciate you, Sister Deborah. Freedom now. Yes. We're going to have a meeting on what's going on in Iraq on Saturday. It'll be Saturday or Sunday with the private group. We're going to talk about Iraq and some other things. We're going to ask Chief Mack to also address living in a private and address the trust. As a matter of fact, he's calling people today dealing with the private. Oh, I didn't know it was 11 o'clock. Let me get off here because he's been busy because over in Gary, Indiana, where he was visiting his family, they had a tornado that ravaged through the area. People have been without electricity for over a week. Trees and roots were uprooted from the grounds and thrown across streets and landing on people's cars and houses. And I'm talking about big old huge trees, and people's roofs were uprooted. It's horrible. And the mainstream media has not widely published this. I know that area. Andrew says in Cleveland, Ohio, there is a stretch of land that runs from Lake Erie to Chester that is called East Boulevard, the cultural garden where you will see so many different national flags. Wow. It's two parts of the East. Dang, I didn't know that was happening. All those national flags were being waved there. Thank you. You're welcome. Sister Ellen Moody is saying that I'm explaining what's going on and how everything is going to go down. She says, thank you for what you're doing, Sister, Dr. Kia. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Blessed our 1776 Constitution states all debts to be paid by silver and gold coins. Yes. Super J says the reason they tell you what they're doing is to get our beliefs and convictions, which creates that. What is it, that reality? Yeah, they tell us what they're doing. So I came to, can y'all hear me? To encourage everybody to hold on. The revaluation of currencies will happen, as Blessed and Highly Favored said. It happened in Kuwait in 1991. The Kuwaiti dinar revalued. It was just that only the elite and people high up in the military knew about it, and they got very rich. Now, our galactic brothers and sisters and the Creator wants all of us to get in on this. So, what would happen is whenever the United States Incorporated would declare war on these nations, their currency would significantly be devalued or drop. The value of it would drop. But the United States Incorporated would fund both sides of wars, including the wars that they declared. Even if they declared the war, they would fund their side and the opposite side and their side. They would fund both sides of the wars, decimate the economy, destroy the infrastructure, which therefore would destroy the currency. The currency's value would significantly go down, And then people high up, the elites and people high up in the military would go in those countries, buy up the currency while it was devalued or destroyed along with the economy and hold on to it until after the war, when the United States government would then go back into those countries, rebuild the infrastructure, which therefore would make the economy strong. And then the currency that had been devalued through war would be reinstated back to its pre war value or pre sanctioned value. And then those high up military people, elite people that bought the currency right after the war would go into the banks with the newly reinstated rate and exchange the currency for the reinstated rate, and they would become millionaires overnight. So let's say you are in a country that the United States of America declared war on. Your currency might have been $3.61 above the USD. That was the exchange rate. Well, once the United States government declared war, the currency would plummet down to 31 cent compared to USD, right? Exchange now 31 cent instead of $3.61. Well, all the military people high up, not even the regular military, they will go buy that currency at 31 cent, hold on to it. After the war, the United States go back in there, rebuild the infrastructure, put in the leader they wanted. Then the country's currency would be reinstated back to the $3.61 that, that reinstated value. Then these people that bought up the currency at 31 cent would go to the bank with that new rate of 361 and they would become millionaires overnight. But we the people didn't know about that. Now it's our time and we know. If you don't know, now you know. Thank you, boss man. So this is what's been happening, unbeknownst to most of us, but now you can get in on this wealth transfer where the elite knew about it and now we know. Where the people in power were making money and stealing our wealth. But now that wealth that was stolen from us will be returned back to us because people are being arrested, their assets are being frozen. President Trump said not long ago, last month, if you are caught trying to harm or cheat Americans, we will find you, freeze your assets, and prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. So things are happening. A blessed and highly favored said that Iraqi dinar was $3.22 before we went into that area, and then that their dinar, their currency plummeted. It will be at least it will when it revalues, it will be reinstated to $3.22 at least, but probably way more than that because now you have to account for the gold that will back the Iraqi dinar, the other commodities or metals that will back the Iraqi dinar. So 322 would be the reinstated value. Thank you, highly blessed and highly favored. But what is the revalue or the upward adjustment of the currency now that Iraq has returned their stolen money and had their gold repatriated back to their country, and taking account for how much gold does Iraq have? How much gold has the central bank of Iraq accumulated? Let's see. Accumulated. Let's see if they'll tell us. Now, I'm sure Iraq is not going to tell us exactly because you never tell people exactly what you have, just like you are not going to go around saying, hey, I got this amount of Iraqi dinar. Hey, I got this amount of gold, right? Because you don't tell everybody your business, but this is what's reported. Central Bank of Iraq. Central Bank of Iraq holds approximately 174.6 tons of gold reserves, valued at over 24 trillion Iraqi dinars, which is roughly 16.4 billion USD. This accumulation places Iraq 28th globally and third among Arab nations for official gold holdings. So, what's going to back the Iraqi dinar? The gold reserves that they have, and they got about 16.4 billion that we know of. So the $3.22 rate that it was is not what it's going to be, because that's the reinstated value. But what's the upward adjustment now that we have to take into account for all the gold that Iraq has and for all the money that was stolen that's been returned, which, by the way, they did return their stolen money. And just in case you didn't know it, they said they were going to revalue the dinar against the USD. Let's talk about Venezuela, as a matter of fact, since we're talking about foreign countries. It was reported that President Trump stole oil from Venezuela, but the Venezuelan government didn't say that. They said Trump bought the oil from Venezuela, and with the reserves with which he traded for the oil, they were backing the Venezuelan bolivar against the USD. Verbatim, that's what they said. Trump bought the oil from us, from the government of Venezuela, and with that money, we will back our Venezuelan bolivar and revalue it against the United States dollar. I reported that on my channel, on my private group, as well as I reported currencies that's been revaluing the countries that have been revaluing their currencies. We don't report on main channel. Everybody's not interested in investing, and that's okay. But I did report it in my membership group, and we have private meetings at least once a week. On the weekend, for anybody that wants to join, you are more than welcome. You can hit the join button. We'll be meeting this weekend about Iraq. We've had meetings where we've had economists to talk to us. We've had people that's been in investments for a long time. One time we had 3 people who've been investing for years to come and talk about currencies that have revalued in the past. We've had professionals to come on and talk about how to live in the private, how to create trust. We have meetings between ourselves. We have the protocol also for going to the bank for foreign currency exchanges in the private group. We've talked about precious metals. We've talked about sleeper currencies that most people don't know about. We've talked about other investment opportunities that people think no longer exist. They think that that some of these investments were outdated or overturned by presidents, and we've proven that they've never been overturned. These private investments, we talked about a lot in the private group. So if you're interested, join the private group. You can hit that button, hit that link that I'm gonna put right here in the chat, follow the prompts, and then you're in. But I love that you quoted the $3.22 Iraqi dinar value before we went in, because that's how much, that's the rate that it was. And right now, what is the Iraqi dinar rate? Wow, look at this. Talking about loss in value. This is the official rate right now. But of course, they're not going to announce that they are backing it by gold. But I showed you the article. I showed you how Google used to say in 2020 and 2022 that the dinar was backed by gold, right? And I told you that it was backed by gold and other foreign currencies. But you won't find it on Google now. Woo, 1 dinar equals 0.00076. Oh, God. That's bad. And it's going down even. Wow. Officially. If you are investing in gold, silver, palladium, platinum, or foreign currencies, hold tight, because these rates will float higher. Thank you, blessed and highly favored. It's go time. Hold on. She said, especially, when the whales start turning in their currency. The whales are millionaires, billionaires, also single family offices, families that have a lot of money. These are the people that hold a whole lot of foreign currencies. They'll start trading in theirs first, according to reports, because they have so much money or so much in foreign currencies, and then other people will follow them. Hey, love. Hi, Miller. It's good to see you, darling. So that's it, family. I love you so much. I just wanted to let you know that we are very close. That global currency reset is already occurring. Countries are restructuring their currencies. I've shown you many countries that have already dropped the zeros. That is not a bad thing. That is a good thing. That means that they've dealt with inflation. That means that their economy is more stable. That means that their new leaders have put in economic policies that will ensure that not only the economy is stable, but banks now or wealth management centers have to be compliant, lawfully compliant. Banks now have to have gold in their coffers to back up the currencies, and so much more. It must be time for me to go. I'm coughing. So, the global currency reset is a large scale shift in how the international monetary system works. It involves realigning currency values, rewriting rules for cross-border trade, and changing what nations use as a baseline reserve asset. In other words, whereas the nations all over the world were using the United States dollar or pegging their currency to the dollar, now they're pegging it to gold. That is a global currency reset. There's a shift also away from the SWIFT system to what's called a new quantum financial system. There's a new monetary systems. There are new banking compliances. Banks have to recognize gold as a tier one asset all over the world. And they have to have not only gold in their coffers, banks do, but also foreign reserve notes and other like foreign currency and other foreign reserve assets. This, according to my reports that I've done, ensures that banks are protected against any foreseeable or non-foreseeable, unforeseeable economic issues. And I reported that banks met globally to ensure that they are ready for foreign currency exchanges. Let me see if I can find that video. And in that report, I said that all banks across the globe made sure that they were ready for the foreign currency exchange, that they had gold and they had foreign currencies in the banks to protect the banks and to prepare for currency exchanges. See if I think that video is in my private group. So let me get off here, family. I love you so much.